So they say a good book, a good conference, and a good movie is judged by the ability to hold its delegates till the end. Let's hope we don't disappoint you. Today we end today's sessions with a debate on asymptomatic hyperuricemia to treat or not to treat. And I am for the motion. I'm Dr. Garima Agarwal, as introduced. So let me begin with first, why are we still talking about uric acid? Well, the story of uric acid has had its own twists and turns. In the 1960s, it was thought uric acid only causes gout. And when they saw that gout patients had kidney disease, well, it was assumed that it was the crystals of uric acid that caused the kidney disease. And a term known as gout nephropathy was coined. Then come the 1980s, when studies realized that actually uric acid seems to be a bystander in all aging-related kidney disease and hypertension. And so it was labeled as a bystander, as something which is just increases when kidney function decreases. And in fact, even taken away by the guidelines as something that should be measured in CKD or other metabolic disorder patients because of no role in pathophysiology. Now we come to the last decade or two, where there's enough evidence to say that actually uric acid might be pro-inflammatory and may be implicated in causing disease rather than just in innocent bystanders. This is supported by a large data of epidemiological studies I would be touching upon today. This is why we're discussing uric acid. Now, before we begin, let me just rehash your memory about how uric acid works. It's a purine degradation product. Nucleic acids adenine and guanine finally break down to uric acid. The final steps are hypoxanthine to xanthine to uric acid in humans, which is regulated by xanthine oxidase. It's also an end product of fructose metabolism, high energy ATP metabolism, and degradation of certain proteins by diet. Most of the uric acid comes actually from the tissue and nucleotide breakdown in our body, and 1/3 of it comes from our diet, which is rich in fructose, alcohol, meats nowadays, and this forms the uric acid pool. A majority of the uric acid, 70% of it, is excreted by the kidneys and the rest by the gut. There are a bunch of transporters in the proximal tubule which regulate the uric acid excretion, and so in the gut. What is interesting to know is that it's only in primates and humans that uric acid is the end product of nucleic acid metabolism. Actually, in other mammals, uric acid further breaks down by an enzyme called uricase to allantoin. So it's believed that during evolution, some specific genetic mutations happened which made us lose our ability to make allantoin and hence keep uric acid as our end product. This must be a good thing, right? They say uric acid is an antioxidant. It's supposed to be similar to caffeine, so maybe helps drive mental performance. Also, there is some data to say that it may be an evolutionary benefit because uric acid seems to increase blood pressure during periods of when salt intake was low for humans, and also during probably the cold wave when the food was low, it seemed to help store fat. Some data also say that it may be protective against malaria. Now, coming to the spectrum of uric acid diseases, the traditional ones that we know about is uric acid converts to MSU, monosodium urate crystals, known to cause gout, crystalluria in the urine, and kidney stones. Also, there is some role in diseases like tumor lysis syndrome, where the uric acid crystals crystallize and cause intratubular obstruction and renal inflammation. It's not this MSU spectrum I'm going to be focusing on today. What we are interested in is the role of uric acid in disorders like hypertension, chronic kidney disease, obesity, metabolic syndrome, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. Coming to, this was a really interesting, during my research for this talk, I found very interesting a recently published article in Nature Reviews Rheumatology 2020, where they actually talk about hyperuricemia as a probable activator of the immune system. They talk about how MSU crystals seem to increase the level of IL-1 beta, which we know to be a pro-inflammatory cytokine, by regulating caspases via inflammasomes and thereof. Also, not only that, it's soluble urate, which seems to have pro-oxidative and pro-inflammatory roles. Pro-oxidative, I know I said it was an antioxidant, but it seems when uric acid combines with peroxyl nitrite or myeloperoxidase, it also releases free radicals in experimental models. Also pro-inflammatory, because a lot of mice models show that when uric acid is injected into the mice, there is an increased signaling of NF-kappa B, which we know as the regulator of the innate immune system. So with this data in hand, They also talk about something called the hyperuricemic memory, which I found very interesting. It's something like the glycemic memory. And they say that, we know uric acid causes an increase in the number of white blood cells and C-reactive protein and circulating cytokines in mice models. And it also seems like that people who have already had an exposure on the subsequent exposure seem to have an increased inflammatory response. In the clinical setting, you can judge this by a recent study which showed that people who had less than 2 episodes of gout a year versus people who had more than 2 episodes of gout a year, the uric acid concentration was more in those who had more episodes. So it seems that more uric acid is causing more inflammation. It's known to now cause a world of changes in the kidney, not any of them good. It seems to have a role in causing glomerulosclerosis, tubular interstitial fibrosis. These are all the changes which are associated with CKD. And these are proven by a large number of mice models. Uric acid is also implicated in hypertension. It's known that it activates the RAS, it decreases the oxidative stress, it increases the oxidative stress, it increases vascular smooth muscle proliferation, decreases nitric oxide, and hence finally causes blood vessel constriction, arteriosclerosis, and hypertension. So what I'm trying to say is, wait, we were talking about uric acid as being good in evolution. So did evolution mess up? How can this substance be actually pro-inflammatory and pro-oxidative? It's believed that actually it was supposed to be a thrifty gene, when we didn't have much. But now that we have enough of salt, enough of fructose, enough of sugars in our diet, this has turned our enemy. Armed with this data, let's look at some of the epidemiological literature. This is a very interesting study, a 5-year Japanese cohort. I wanted to focus especially on this because it covers kind of all aspects. And the good thing about Japan is they have a lot of data. So in their Center of Preventive Medicine, they have these regular population coming in for yearly checks. So it's these people they followed up for 5 years. At the beginning of the study, these people had documented hyperuricemia, that is a uric acid of more than 7 in men and more than 6 in women. But they did not have hypertension, diabetes, dyslipidemia, overweight, or were taking any medication for uric acid at the start of the study. Now, they followed up these patients for the next 5 years, and what they found was quite shocking. As you can see in this graph, the boxes with the outline is the hyperuricemic group, and they found that this population of hyperuricemia before 5 years ago actually developed a statistically significant incident of new hypertension, new dyslipidemia, new chronic kidney disease, and new obesity. They didn't find a positive correlation with diabetes, but there was a trend towards the positive in women. So that shows that, yes, well, uric acid could be responsible for these disorders. I'm focusing on only some experimental data. Why we keep going back to experimental data when we talk about uric acid is you have to understand that in kidney disease, uric acid is going to increase. And correlation doesn't mean causation. It basically means confusion in this case. So experimental data, what we can do is we can inject uric acid into animals and actually see what happens. And what they found was when in human endothelial cells, uric acid was injected, there was increased production of reactive oxygen species. Hyperuricemic rats seem to have high blood pressure as compared to the control group, and an increased activation of RAS among other pro-inflammatory effects. I'm just quoting the very prominent studies. Also, what about asymptomatic hyperuricemia in CKD? I didn't quote the studies, I'm quoting a meta-analysis included more than 1 lakh of participants, and they showed that it had Western as well as Asian studies that hyperuricemic individuals tended towards new onset CKD. They followed up this population and looked at new onset CKD, and this was a meta-analysis, and it all favors hyperuricemia related to new CKD. This is just all the studies they compiled. I wanted to show you they included uric acid more than 7 and 6. Coming to epidemiological data of asymptomatic hyperuricemia related to CKD, there is a large number of trials. I cannot possibly talk about them. I just wanted to show the weight of my debate by showing you all these studies, all significant, all showing that hyperuricemia was related to new onset CKD. Some of them have been quoted a lot. The Vienna Health Study, 21,000 participants, follow-up of 7 years. The ERIC study, follow-up of 8.5 years. Also, these are a large number of trials which show relation of hyperuricemia with progression of CKD. I'm not talking about gout or symptomatic. This is asymptomatic hyperuricemia and progression of CKD. And all of these trials, the one circle showed that hyperuricemia was related to increased progression of CKD. Of course, there's always going to be naysayers. The ones I crossed out were studies that didn't show any correlation. MDRD study was significant amongst them. I'm going to be elaborating more on some of the significant data. I have similar big charts on relation of asymptomatic hyperuricemia with hypertension, asymptomatic hyperuricemia with metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes in men, women, and both, and even with AKI. So I'm just giving you references, but there is enough data to say that hyperuricemia is associated with higher incidence of these disorders.
Dr. Garima, you could take it further from the rebuttal.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, we'll have Dr. Jaloka speaking, and then you could further with the rebuttal.
Okay, fine. Sure. So should I stop now?
Yes.
Hello? Yeah, okay.